You're tuning in to Sugar, Spice, and Everyday Rice, a show about Asian American Pacific Islander issues. This week, we have two guests joining us. One is named Jeff Sheng from Harvard, and now he's currently a doctoral student at Stanford. We also have Cory Hollis from the College Academic Counseling here at UCLA. And of course, you have our co-host. I'm DJ Rice Cooker, aka Kathy, and
I'm Tinkerbell, and we have a lot of great stuff to talk about today, so stay tuned.
Like every show, we'd like to introduce our guest. I feel more comfortable if the guest introduced himself. So maybe, Cory, can you start off? Tell us about yourself, maybe where you grew up, what you're doing now, and what else we should know.
Hi, my name is Cory Hollis. I'm the Director of Academic Advising for the College of Letters and Science, and I grew up in Hawaii. I was born and raised there, went to high school there, did a year of college at the University of Hawaii, then took a long time off. I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia for about 4 years, went to Simon Fraser University for a couple of years. I moved back to Hawaii, finished out my bachelor's degree. Undergraduate degree was in history and English. And then I came to Los Angeles to come to UCLA to work on my PhD in European history. While I was working at UCLA, I started working as a graduate student as one of our college academic mentors in college academic counseling, doing academic advising for first and second year and new transfer students. And I transitioned onto a career position on staff as a counselor there. And then I became the training coordinator and then the director of college academic counseling. And now I'm actually just director of academic advising for the college. So it's kind of been a very interesting career.
Hi, my name is Jeff Sheng, and I'm a photographer and artist based in Los Angeles, actually. I'm finishing my PhD at Stanford right now, but also publishing a book in the next few weeks on Fearless, Portraits of LGBT Athletes. I believe that's why you asked me to be on the show at UCLA, because there's an exhibition of the work currently at the Wooden Center. The project features over 200 lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender athletes who play on high school or college sports teams. I've been photographing this project since 2003 and working on it for the last 13 years, and it's an honor to actually have it out in print very soon.
Great to hear. As you can both see, both our guests are very accomplished in their fields, and they're quite humble about what they do, because I also know that, Jeff, you've done a project about the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy in the military as well?
Yeah, so I'm actually pretty well known mostly for this project I did between 2009 and 2011, where I photographed closeted service members in the United States military. These photographs were done before the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the policy that prohibited lesbian, gay, and bisexual service members from serving openly in the military, heavily featured in media, especially in 2010 when Congress was debating the repeal. And, during this whole time, I was working on this project on student athletes, but it's interesting that this other project became much more widely circulated. It was profiled in the New York Times, on ABC World News, CNN, NPR, for instance.
So could you tell me a little bit about yourself and why you are invested in learning about LGBT members of the community?
Sure. Well, the Fearless Project actually began mostly because I was a closeted athlete in high school. I grew up 35 miles from here in Thousand Oaks, went to a public school, played varsity tennis, played competitive tennis since I was about 7, 8 years old, actually. And my own coming out process involves athletics. And the book that's coming out is actually a personal memoir plus a photography book, all kind of rolled into one. It's a 316-page color photography book with this text of mine that I write, sharing my own story. And it serves as a sort of foundation for an exploration of sort of the LGBT rights movement in general, especially over the last decade, the gains that we've made. That's really how the Fearless Project got started. So, after college, I wanted to do this photo project exploring out LGBT athletes, and I felt that photographing them, visiting them at their either high school or college campuses and doing these portraits of them, kind of celebrating their ability to be out at such a young age, something that I personally could not do, was something really important.
And I know we've all gotten the chance to visit the exhibition before starting our show. I was wondering what my co-host and Cory think about it. Did you have any initial reactions when looking at the photographs of these athletes?
I thought it was a terrific exhibition. The pictures were really well done and showed us who these people were. And I think that it's so important, particularly in athletics, to see these people. And I thought it was a really well done exhibition.
Thank you.
Yeah, I concur. I also think that the visibility of queer athletes is tremendous to see themselves being reflected into for other LGBTQ athletes, to see that there are people courageous enough to, be on a photo in the Wooden Center, which a lot of people who exercise every day pass by. And what I thought was striking to me was that the photos of these athletes it showed that they were strong. Like, there was strength, inner strength, that not just in the physical sense, but their mind, their strength to be an out athlete, which I think is remarkable.
I mean, that was really part of the photo project itself, was trying to figure out how to photograph them. And so I usually have them work out a little bit right before the photo shoot, get them relaxed and in the moment of being an athlete. And we generally photograph anywhere between 60 and 100 photographs. And I try different poses, and then in between all these different poses, they're running around or doing whatever sport they do. And I think there comes a moment where they feel really comfortable about themselves, and they forget that there's other people around possibly, or they forget what this photo is supposed to be, and they really actually are themselves in the moment. And I think that's one of the great things that the photographs really capture.
I know that you're currently pursuing a PhD at Stanford. Can you tell a bit more about this experience? Like, I also want to know more about your experience, Cory, as a former PhD student yourself.
Sure. At Stanford, I'm getting my doctorate right now in sociology. Primary fields are in studying diversity, discrimination, particularly in gender and sexual orientation, and also tangentially in race and ethnicity.
I originally came to UCLA to work on my PhD in European history, which I did work on for a very long time, but then I started working in academic advising and knew that this is where my career was going to go. So there was a period when I stopped working on my dissertation. It was mostly done, but for about 5 years I was working full-time, and I didn't really get back to it until I was pregnant, and then decided I really had to finish it up. Got it done, signed off on, and got to receive my PhD. So going for a PhD, I think, is very different from what a lot of undergraduates think. You think that you're really good in college, you really like it, you're getting all A's, and you want to go to graduate school because it seems the next best, or it seems like the logical next step, but when I talk to students, I do advise them to think about why they're going for an advanced degree, whether it's going to get them where they want to go, and why do they want to do it, because it's really way too difficult to do just because you're not sure what else you should be doing at this point in time. So as we go into the end of the year for our graduating seniors, it's just something to think about.
I'm curious to know, as someone who is interested in pursuing a PhD at some point after graduation, what is the process like in applying? Like, how do you know what you want to study? I feel like I don't know yet, but I just know I want to study something.
I think you may not know now exactly what you want to study, but you probably have some idea of what kinds of things that you're interested in. When you're applying to graduate school admissions are much more complicated than undergraduate admissions. So there are a lot of factors over which you will know nothing about and have no control over. When you apply to an undergraduate program, you know that they're looking at certain GPAs, or you know that they're looking at certain SAT scores, and AP scores, you know all that. You can kind of figure out where you're going to stand. But when you're applying to a graduate program, what you might not know is, say you want to work with this faculty member, you don't know that that faculty member is retiring, or that faculty member isn't taking on any more students at this time, or that they've already taken on too many students in that particular subfield, so this year they're going to concentrate on this other subfield. So there are a lot of factors that you won't have access to ahead of time. So you should apply to a variety of schools. That being said, when you do apply to graduate school, you should have some idea of what you want to study, because in your personal statement, that will be a very important factor if you're saying this is the field I want to go into, because they will take that into account in looking for what's the best match between a potential applicant and the program.
And Jeff, what was your motivation of getting a PhD?
It was actually during the Jonas Hotel project I mentioned earlier. I was traveling around the country, and I was photographing these service members, and also, still working on the athletes project. And each time you meet one of these people, they tell you about everything going on in their lives. And I was just really fascinated with all the different stories that I was hearing and what I was learning from being on the road with them, and really sitting down and having these really in-depth conversations about what their lives were like, especially when they were facing discrimination. And so in 2011, I thought that, I'd already had an MFA, so I have this graduate degree already that is a terminal degree in the visual arts, but I thought that because my work dealt with sociological issues, they deal with gender, they deal with race, they deal with organizations, that I wanted to be trained very well. And so I put some feelers out in terms of pursuing a PhD. And you pick the right program, you figure out what the right match is, and it's a very tough process, I would say. But, my program is very wonderful in terms of being a supportive base for me as I continue to do the photo work and the artwork that I do.
And Cory, I'm singling you out. Why did you decide to do a PhD?
I was one of those people that thought, I really enjoy college, I'm going to go on to graduate school, because isn't that what you do when you're good at the undergraduate level? I really like doing history, and I wanted to teach history, and I wanted to teach history at the post-secondary level, for which you do need an advanced degree. But, you never know where you're going to end up in life, and I ended up somewhere very different, but which I feel actually, now with hindsight, is something that really suits me, and I like doing it. I would probably not have been as good a very good academic. I have a short attention span, so the whole, publish or perish thing is something that is difficult. I'm not sure I could sustain long projects a very long period of time, but that's why I ended up where I am. But, if I hadn't gone this way, then I wouldn't have ended up here at UCLA. In fact, I wasn't supposed to come to UCLA at all.
Let's take a quick moment, and I'm going to ask a question for all of you. When you were a child, where did you think you would be? And when you were in high school, where did you think you would be? Is it where you are right now? And what sort of surprises have you encountered along the way? I know personally, I never would have thought I would have been here at UCLA or even going to college, because I was so convinced by the time I was 16 I was going to move out of the house. But I'm really blessed to be here. And what about y'all? What experiences have you had that was unexpected, or is it exactly how you wanted it to be?
Well, at school, I remember writing in our daily diary, and those prompts become very generic quick. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know how many times I've written a diary entry about what I wanted to be. It ranged from, I wanted to be a firefighter, I wanted to be a millionaire so I could buy my parents a house, and then the teacher was very touched that I would do that, but the whole millionaire thing, I don't even know where that came from. So lots of different things, but I realized the general theme is that I want to help people, and I liked writing, so why not do that? And so I've been, in high school I was in journalism, and I had an opinion column once in a while, and I got to, say what I thought. But, in high school, it's just angsty and you're just angry. But then now that I'm in college, I have more context. And I'm really interested now in Asian American activism and writing about issues like affirmative action, the representation of Asian Americans in Hollywood, all that stuff. I'm very interested in intersectionality, which is an academic term that basically means that your different identities, they intersect in a way where you can't separate that experience from each other, and you have to explain it in a very specific way.
When I was a child, I was always playing school. I was always playing teacher, so maybe that's why I had always thought I was going to become a teacher, and wasn't good with small kids, so I didn't want to teach in elementary school, and preferred, the post-secondary college level sort of teaching. Although actually I went through a phase, interestingly enough, when I was in high school, I accidentally attended this journalism, sort of like a conference for high school students. And it was really a workshop seminar where they had students from all over the island come, and they had workshops on different topics. They had sports writing, they had cartoon, they had op-ed, and I think they had news writing or something like that. And I didn't realize it, but all the other participants were on their school newspapers, which I was not. And I went in and did the one on news writing. And what it is they gave you a workshop on how to do this kind of writing, and then they gave you an hour to interview. They had somebody there interviewed, and then you had an hour to write an article or whatever, your op-ed or your sports writing piece. And then I actually won for my category, which made the advisor for my high school paper sort of take notice of me, because she didn't have any clue who I was before, since I wasn't on the paper. And so I went to a high school institute at Northwestern University, 3-week program for high school students across the country. And again, they have different areas. So they had engineering, I think they had debate, they had theater arts, and I was in the journalism one. So I thought I was going to go into journalism when I graduated from high school and went to college. But I think my first semester in college, I sort of decided, I don't really know what I want to do, and there aren't really any journalism jobs out there. And so I went to college for a year and then dropped out for a while before I went back. So I was 30 before I got my bachelor's degree.
Yeah, I think I went through high school just like a normal, kind of ambitious high school student who wanted to at least go to a good college. That's what my parents really pushed me to do. And I wasn't really quite sure what I was going to be when I grew up. I was very good at history, but I was also really good sort of in cultural studies, and you don't really have cultural studies in high school. And so I think in college, that's really where my interest went. And I decided to major in filmmaking and photography, which, my parents were really quite, they actually wound up supporting me quite a bit. At first, they were a little bit worried about sort of future job prospects. But I was very lucky to have Asian parents who were very supportive of sort of creative endeavors of mine. As long as I kept up with, good grades and always had a backup plan, and I did. I think throughout my artistic career, I've always had some sort of backup plan, including, me being in a PhD program right now is part of this backup plan, because I can parlay that into an academic job, hopefully with tenure eventually somewhere, and not have to only rely on sort of sales of artwork or doing creative projects all the time.
This is to our guest. Were your parents supportive of you during this process, and what was your interaction with them in what you were pursuing?
My parents were supportive sort of in an abstract kind of way. I mean, they certainly didn't say, you have to be this major, you have to be that major. They weren't very happy when I dropped out of college. But again, I think had I stayed in college, I would have just simply been taking random classes and not doing particularly well. I mean, not doing badly, but not doing well because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really have a goal at that point. So I definitely think it was much better for me to have dropped out. When I did return to school, you know, it was a conscious decision some years later to say, yes, I do want to go back to school and this is what I do want to study. And so I certainly did a lot better at that point and was much more motivated, and I actually got a lot more out of the classes and things that I took. You know, I wasn't taking GEs just to get rid of them. I was taking GEs because, hey, it was a cool chance to learn about stuff that I wouldn't otherwise be learning about. You know, like meteorology. I took meteorology for one of my sciences because I wanted to know why the weathermen were always wrong. Got a lot more out of my college career having stopped out and gone back when I was interested and had more experience.
Yeah, my parents have always been really supportive. You know, I think that's one of the nice things, probably led to a lot of my successes, because they realized that I didn't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or sort of like I think a lot of Asian parents hope their kids will be. They just wanted me to do the best that I could at whatever I did. And I think that is unique sometimes, especially when you enter risky fields. And I think that that was, looking back now, very crucial to sort of the success that I've had in everything. One of the biggest, you know, when in 2010, when the New York Times did a big profile of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy piece on the project I was doing, I didn't realize this, but the Chinese newspaper in Southern California, the World Journal, actually translated it in Chinese, and my mom was just really, really proud of reading about the project I was doing in sort of her native language and everything, and sort of it being shared in the community. And so these are some of the things that I think for myself have been really rewarding.
I think that it was really fortunate too that your parents were so supportive, because I see a lot of students whose parents do want them to be doctors and they're not inclined that way. And so I've seen students deliberately fail classes so that they couldn't get into medical school, or I've seen them drop out just because of, you know, the kind of pressure. It's a very hard line to balance.
Yeah, when I was teaching, I taught at UC Santa Barbara for 5 years, actually. I taught in the Asian American Studies program. I also taught studio art and photography. So, you know, I think it was a really weird experience kind of moving between these two very different departments, because you had like photography in one and then you had Asian American Studies majors in the other. And I got a sense sort of from some students who, even in Asian American Studies, you know, they were pre-med majors, and then suddenly it was like a breath of fresh air that they were taking a class on like Asian American history, and they were like, oh, I wish I could take more of this, but it'll screw up my GPA if I like take classes that are not in the sciences or something like that, or it's not contributing to me studying for the MCATs or something. And you know, I just think that being young, you're only young once, and I think your mind is so creative at that moment. The possibilities you have are limitless, and I would highly encourage, I know most of the audience listening are all students, but if any parents are listening, I think it's important to realize that, you know, your kids only really have one chance to really think outside the box sometimes, and you never know what they're really going to come up with, you know, before they turn 30.
And there are way more careers out there than doctor, lawyer, and teacher.
Yeah, my career path is totally non-traditional. I advise students too that if you want to go into the creative fields, it's going to be tough. You know, if you want the easy path, being a doctor is actually kind of easy. You just take science classes, do well in the MCATs, get a good GPA, apply to med school, get in. It's a whole track. Yeah, you just become a doctor. I've seen it with a lot of my friends, and to them, they feel like it's actually a pretty easy route, a very high stability. You're not constantly worried about the next creative project that you're going to do. There's this pressure, you know, to fund work all the time that you don't get, I think, if you're just going to a 9-to-5 job. So maybe keep that in mind too, you know.
I'm curious to hear what Cory has to say, because since you are in the, you know, working with academic counseling, what kind of conversations do you have with students? As you've mentioned, students who deliberately flunk out because they feel like, you know, being pre-med is not the way to go, but how do they tell their parents? Like, how does that conversation go about in a way where you're able to guide them towards what they're interested in?
You know, it's a very difficult conversation, and ideally, in an ideal world, you would say, do what you want to do because it's your life. But the reality is these students are dealing with a lot of pressure from their parents. It's not so easy to just do what you want to do when you have parents who have these expectations. I mean, you know, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily wrong. You want to please your parents, and I understand that. So, but sometimes what it comes down to is you can either graduate from UCLA with a degree that might not be a science degree, or you could flunk out of UCLA because that's where you're going. Sometimes they're doing okay in the sciences, they're just not going to be happy. And if you pick medicine as your career and you go into it, you're going to be doing it for 40 years or something. That's a long time to be doing something that you're not really interested in doing or you don't like doing. So when I talk to students, I usually talk to them about coming up with an alternative plan that is a viable plan. So what are you interested in? Why are you interested in? How are you going to make this a viable career? And to try to take that back to your parents and not just say, I want to go into art, because that's something for your parents to very easily, the parents are coming from a good place. They want their children to have a financial stable future. And when the student comes home and says, I want to do art, I want to be an artist, which I have had, the parent is naturally thinking, oh, my child is going to starve. He's never going to have a steady job. This is not okay. But when you say, yes, this is what I want to do and I'm good at it and I'm going to do this and I'm going to study this and these are the careers that I can go into and here's how I'm going to move into those careers. This is what I'm going to do, and to have a concrete plan there, it can help. It's not going to be easy, and every family dynamic and every parent and student is different. So, sometimes the student has to know how best to approach something like that, and that's difficult. But we do try to talk of ways in which they can have a more concrete plan before they move forward in talking to their... I know I have had a student who said that she had talked to CAPS about how to approach her parents, that they wanted her to do pre-med, she wanted to do something in the humanities, and they actually said, don't tell your parents this quarter, wait a quarter or two, wait until you've had some classes under your belt and have done well in them. So there are sort of different strategies to try to convey to your parents, how important this is and why you want to do it and how you can still be successful. I mean, there are lots of different measures of success, and let's be honest, salary isn't the only measure, and I don't even think it's the most important measure, really.
I can personally relate to that statement. I have very relaxed family members. They do want me to major in the sciences or something practical, quote unquote, because they believe it'll result in a career, but I haven't found anything here that I wanted to pursue in the sciences. So as a humanities major, there is some sort of dissent from my family for not studying something more serious or concrete. However, I never really minded because I'm just happy that I even got here to college, and I know that one day I'm going to try to be so good that they can't even question my path or where I'll be at. However, I know that I'm not going to define success, like you said, through a wage or salary. It's hard to convince them because, like you said, they are coming from a place of care and support. They want to make sure that you're able to feed yourself every day and that you're not making just ends meet to barely pay the electricity bill, for example. So I'm trying to understand, are you saying that there has to be some sort of compromise in finding a realistic career, or what is it that you're trying to take away in simpler terms?
I don't know whether or not there has to be a compromise. Again, I think it depends on every individual student and their family dynamic, and maybe for a student, not becoming a doctor but going somewhere else in a healthcare field might be an acceptable compromise. Or maybe for another student, no, the artistic career is where he wants to go and that is the only, sort of thing. I think each person has to find their own path and will find it and will be more or less happy. I have a 6-year-old son, and what I have always said from the day he was born was, I want him to be a happy and productive member of society. That's what I want for him when he grows up. Whether or not this means he goes to school, whether or not it means he gets a degree or a bachelor's degree, or as long as he's a happy and productive member, then I'll be happy. Which I know a lot of people I know think that that's strange. Why would I not want my son to go to college? But why would I want my son to go to college if it's not what he wants to do, if it's not where he's going to be? Then I'll spend a lot of money for him going to college, and he'll spend a lot of time trying not to go to classes. College isn't for everybody. I'm sort of the first person to say that. I do think that it gives you a lot of training. And I think a humanities degree, to be perfectly honest, trains you better for the outside world than a science degree in terms of critical thinking and analysis and communication and things like that. So I wouldn't say that a humanities degree or a social science degree isn't useful. Being able to analyze and look at data and draw conclusions means that when you read a newspaper article, you can read between the lines. You know what's not being said. You can put different facts together to come up with perhaps something that's closer to what really happened out there. And I think that that's critical. And employers are looking for people who can write, who can communicate, who can work with other students, with other colleagues, who can do teamworking and collaboration. That's what employers are looking for now. So, I definitely think a humanities degree isn't simply, job in a coffee shop.
And I know we're all taking very different paths, so I was wondering what everybody else thinks about how you define success individually.
I'm still learning, as as a college student, but success to me is when I can go home every day knowing that I had done something productive, as Cory mentioned, and something that I truly feel like needs to be done. I will quote Jerry Kang, who is going to be the Vice Chancellor of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. He said something very striking to me. He said, "If not me, then who?" when he was talking about the fact that there was not enough literature in law about Asian Americans, about hate crimes against Asian Americans, and the fact that, well, no one's paying attention to that is because we're a model minority. No one thinks, oh, why would anyone target model minority people? So if not me, then who? That's how I felt doing the work that I do now for the Asian Pacific Islander magazine at UCLA called Pacific Ties, which I'm the editor-in-chief for, because there was nobody on staff when I heard about it. Like, all the people had left, and I thought, okay, there's 34% Asian American population at UCLA. We need to be represented. We can't just not have a voice on campus. So what I'm doing now, and I feel so proud of, is that I have a group of people, about 10 people on my staff, including my co-host here, and we have a website, pacificties.org, and I just feel so proud that we're able to bring together lots of different ideas. We don't always agree on it, but we're able to represent different points of view. Live action Mulan, the film that's going to be coming up. I know some people who want only the person playing Mulan to be Chinese, to be authentic. And other people who say, well, it doesn't matter as long as it's an Asian person. Any representation is better than nothing. So these are the kinds of things that we talk about.
In terms of success, I think that my definition is always just do your best, and if you're ever too comfortable, then maybe you should be trying something different. At the end of the day, I think your own self happiness is very important too, in your own definition. That you should feel fulfilled at the end of the day in what you do. You should feel proud of what you do, and hopefully that all lines up so that you can earn enough so you can sustain yourself in just sort of day-to-day livelihoods. So yeah, that's kind of my definition of success.
I think success is a very personal thing, which is why you're asking all of us to come up with their own definitions. I mean, for me, I feel successful in that I feel like I can make a difference, that I help people. As you say, you wanted to help people, and I do feel like I get a chance to help people, and I get a chance to meet a lot of amazing people like you and a lot of amazing students on this campus. So I love coming to work in the mornings. Not a big fan of the commute, but since we're not moving the campus into the valley, that's probably not going to change. But I do feel like I can make a difference here, that I am good at what I do, that I do my best when I am here. I always do it's a good way to say this. I always work my hardest and do my best for whatever it is that needs to be done. I put in my all. I also feel like on a personal level, I want my family and my son to be somebody who is, respectful of other people, who thinks about things in a thoughtful way. So I feel like he's a good kid, and I feel sort of moving in the right direction there. We'll see. I'll never know until he grows up, right?
I know the timing is a bit awkward right now with a few minutes left, but I was wondering, since our topic of the show is about Asian American identity, how does that factor into your life and what you do today? Were there any experiences you had that highlighted you had this sort of identity, or how do you integrate it into your work coming from this background?
Sure. I think one of the things that was striking when you originally asked me to be on the show was sort of talking about the identities of some of the athletes in the photo show right now, that I think you were struck by the racial representation of them, and that there was a very high number, or representationally, that we are not used to seeing, of Asian Americans. And the book that's coming out is kind of interesting. There were 8 different covers that we had made for the book instead of just one, and part of it was because the original design had a gay white male football player on the cover, and that was the first design that my designer showed me, and I sort of looked at it and I was like, I'd suggested a collage of different athletes. That's actually what I really wanted, but my designers were pretty adamant that one athlete needed to be on the cover. But then they turned it back to me and said, this is only one of 8 covers we want to make, because what we want to do is create 8 different covers, each one with a stripe coming from the original 1978 gay pride flag, showing this rainbow, that if you put all the 8 books together, and the insides of each book are the same, but the outsides are different, very representational of the LGBT community. That's something that they did, and we picked, 8 different athletes. There's a trans-identified athlete, there athletes of color, and there was actually an Asian American athlete on one of the covers. That was something that I had hoped would happen, but I think in these decisions you don't always have final say. So we had like 30 different possible covers, and we shuffled them around, and there was a really interesting mix. And by the time we got to the final 8, seeing sort of this really beautiful photograph of an Asian American athlete, who was out in high school and ran track. His parents, are refugees, but it's just an incredible kind of representation of what I see as the LGBT community in America in general. So I think that if I was not a person of color, if I was not Asian American, I don't know if this book would be made with that kind of attention to diversity.
I think UCLA is a very diverse campus, and we have all students from all different backgrounds, and it does help me. One of the things that I'm sort of aware of is this whole unconscious bias issue that people don't realize that they have, but they do, and it shows up in the most, the smallest of ways, in microaggressions, or just little things that faculty say, or that somebody might say to somebody else, not just faculty to students. But that's just one of the issues that we're looking at the moment, so it comes up as an example. But it does make me aware that the things that I think, or the things that other people assume about me, are things that I may hold about other people. So, I do try to keep these things in mind, to recognize each person as an individual and not hold them to stereotypes. But at the same time, I should say I am proud to be American of Japanese ancestry, which is, I'm a 4th generation, and I am proud of that as well. It is part of my identity.
As we're wrapping up, I'd like to ask if you have anything to plug for us about your upcoming book, or if people could follow you on social media, Jeff.
The book comes out in a few weeks, or whenever this comes out. You can probably go to fearlessproject.org, one word, fearlessproject.org, and you can follow me on social media pretty easily. It's JEFFSHENG, and that's the handle at Twitter, Instagram, and /Facebook if you want to visit me there.
Do you have anything you want to bring up to plug something that's going on? What should we watch out for as UCLA students?
As UCLA students, I would recommend that you come and talk to an academic advisor anytime, at least once a year, just to make sure you're on track. There's no point in students reinventing the wheel. We're here. We can make sure that you're on track. We can make sure that things that you're thinking you might like to do can be done, or maybe we might know a better way to do it, and that your time here runs smoothly.
Any favorite songs?
Not really, no. Do you have a favorite
Oh, my favorite songs are all from the 80s, so...
That works?
That's fine.
Really?
Yeah.
I like
Title.
Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, yes. Okay, great. That will end the show. We'll be playing Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody. Have a great day, y'all, and tune in next week. It's our final show. We have a fabulous guest, Alex Ritchie, who is a student here at UCLA, graduating senior, and she recently released her new album.
She did? I'm excited. She's going to be performing as well, live, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I hope the equipment works by then, and have a wonderful day.
Is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? Caught in a landslide, no escape from reality. Open your eyes, look up to the skies and see.